Doing well, Mike. A little exciting MLK Day basketball.
Yeah, traditional.
Some Eagles stuff.
Little traditional MLK day here today. The Sixers gave us a nice, exciting double overtime game. But we know the big story has really been Doug Pederson. He gets hired, John, and they make it official. They're going to make it official tomorrow with a press conference. We'll have that at 2 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. And then, of course, everybody's got their eyes on who the coordinators will be. And Frank Reich, it looks like, John, he is going to be the offensive coordinator. What do you know about him? Do you like him if he's the guy who comes in here?
Yeah, I do. He's a well-respected guy with coordinator in San Diego after sort of Ken Wisenhunt went to Tennessee, got the bump up, and everybody knows him from Buffalo. And what a great backup quarterback he was for years under Jim Kelly. The big comeback, obviously, he's most well known for. So the Eagles are collecting backup quarterbacks. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I certainly have no issue with Doug Pederson bringing in Frank Reich. I was a little concerned about defensive coordinator when I heard the name Steve Spagnuolo, and I think sort of, again, the Eagles are going to be saved from themselves by the Giants keeping him. Remember, this guy, he was the architect of the worst defense in NFL history in New Orleans. And the very next season, Rob Ryan comes in, who's not exactly the most well-regarded guy either, and turns that into the fourth best unit in the entire NFL. So that's the kind of guy you're talking about. You saw what he did in New York. Granted, the talent level wasn't there, but I didn't understand the interest in Steve Spagnuolo even a little bit. And it looks like ABC, Channel 6 in Philadelphia is reporting Jim Schwartz is going to be the next defensive coordinator. That obviously would be a much, much better hire. Not only does he have the head coaching experience, which will help a first-time head coach like Doug Pederson, but he's also a traditional 4-3. I know people don't want to hear wide 9, but he does it a lot better than what Juan Castillo did when he was here. And most notably, you're taking the chains off your best defensive player, and that's Fletcher Cox, who can play the under tackle on the 4-3, and that is, trust me, a very, very good thing.
Yeah, and one thing with Frank Reich, I think he's looked at, he kind of seemed like a scapegoat to me out there in San Diego this year, John, because they had a pretty good offensive team his first couple of years in San Diego, but if you weren't paying attention to the Chargers, they had all sorts of injuries on the offensive line. I mean, their team was a disaster with injuries this year, so it seems to me that he kind of became kind of the scapegoat out there.
Yeah, you're right. They had a ton of offensive line injuries, and at one point they were down to a fourth center, so you know how difficult that could be. And a lot of it, let's face it, let's be honest, in the NFL, it's your success or failure is based upon the talent. And anytime you have that many injuries up front, you're going to have issues. And still, because of the quarterback they had in Phillip Rivers, who can sling the ball down the field at times, San Diego's always going to move the football. But, yeah, I mean, there was concern that Mike McCoy would lose his job entirely, and that entire organization is in flux because of the potential move to Los Angeles. So it's almost where you have to do something. If you're the head coach, and Mike McCoy's obviously the head coach, he's got to go in a different direction to make himself look better to move forward.
Yeah, John, and then, on the defense, you mentioned Schwartz is a guy. We've heard his name before. So if they bring Reich in and Schwartz along with Doug Pederson, do you feel like, I don't want to say it's an upgrade, but is this a suitable staff that you would feel comfortable with moving forward?
Yeah, I do think it is a suitable staff. And I think, as I said, my biggest concern, and my dog is chiming in, I don't know if you can hear her, but my biggest concern was getting some experience at the coordinator position as far as a guy who was a head coach in the past. Because one of the biggest problems with any first-time head coach is the other things, not the X's and O's, all the ancillary things about dealing with the media and about how handling things in controversy and moving forward. And a guy like Schwartz can help him with that. You see some of the issues that coaches have across the league as far as dealing with controversy. That's something you can't really know how you're going to handle until you actually tackle it. And to have somebody as a sounding board who's done it in the past not always in a great way, because Schwartz had a reputation of having an undisciplined team, and that's a concern. But remember, he's not the head coach anymore. He's just the defensive side of the ball and a sounding board for a first-time head coach, and I think that's good if they move in that direction.
John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter. So now Pederson's in, Frank Reich. I know there's nothing concrete out there, but now the next thing is Bradford. Do you think that Bradford is a priority, or new staff, new situation, do they look for their own quarterback?
Boy, that's going to be interesting, and it's a tough decision. And that was one of my main issues dating back to when Chip Kelly made the trade, because you have to make a decision. And your decision is not just based on what happened on the football field, because Sam Bradford played pretty well down the stretch. But because he's an impending free agent, because of the dearth of quarterbacks in this league, he's going to get paid more than he's worth. That's just the reality of the situation. It's going to be anywhere from $18 to $21 million. And if you put that kind of investment into a quarterback like that, that means the back end of your roster is going to be hurt. And I'm not sure the Eagles see themselves. I know they shouldn't see themselves as on the verge of being a contender. So I think by bringing in a new coach, you could sort of have an organizational shift in philosophy. You have the 13th pick in the draft. There might be a quarterback there. It might be time to go to the sort of the Donovan McNabb, Doug Pederson route back when Andy Reid came in. And you have the new coach who happens to be the same guy. Maybe you bring in a veteran quarterback to be the bridge to the rookie quarterback. I think that might be the better way to go here.
Interesting stuff. John, you have ranked the head coaching hires from 1 to 7 now that Mike Mularkey is in Tennessee. All 7 jobs are now filled. The coaching carousel in the NFL is complete. Let's go over your list here. How did you rank them?
Well, I think it was interesting first that of all the 7 new coaches around the league, all of them were offensive minded. So all of them have that pedigree. There was no defensive coaches hired in this go-round. I think that tells you a lot about this league. But, you know, going from bottom to top, I think there's no question Mike Mularkey was the worst of the 7 hires, and it was, you know, a money decision. The Titans still owe Ken Wisenhunt $15 million. Unlike the Eagles, who got a break because Chip Kelly got hired by the 49ers, so some of their money is offset by the contract he signs in San Francisco. Wisenhunt, as an offensive coordinator, is making far less, so the Titans are still on the hook for the majority of that money, and they wanted the low-cost guy, and that's why they took the interim tag off Mularkey.
So Mularkey, go ahead. Mularkey, you got last. A little surprise here in the 6th spot.
Yeah, I put Chip 6th, and it's not about anything more than his personality and the fact that Trent Baalke's in San Francisco. And you don't have to go back far to see that Trent Baalke couldn't get along with another headstrong personality in Jim Harbaugh. And think about it. For the people who like Chip Kelly, Mike, yeah, Jim Harbaugh was one of the best coaches in football. No arguments. Nobody will say anything bad about him as a football coach. Way more success than Chip Kelly. Baalke couldn't get along with him. How's he going to get along with Chip Kelly?
Right.
So from the front office perspective, I can't see that working long term.
Down to number 5, Ben McAdoo with the Giants, and then number 4, Doug Pederson. So you actually like that the Eagles ended up with Pederson over McAdoo?
Yeah, we talked about that before. I'm not sure what all the love is with McAdoo, and I talked about the lack of winning in New York since he's come on board and replaced Kevin Gilbride. I understand the statistics are better for Eli Manning, but the bottom line isn't better. And I think, as I mentioned, with sort of like Jim Schwartz over Steve Spagnuolo, if that's the way it goes, I think Doug Pederson over Ben McAdoo is it's not what the Eagles wanted, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and I think that's what happened for Philadelphia there.
Adam Gase, the one that got away, number 3. Dirk Cutter, a lot of people, it wasn't even on a lot of people's radars. It was kind of a surprise that that job was even open. So you went Gase 3, Cutter 2, and then Hugh Jackson, number 1.
Yeah, I mean, the Cutter one is simply for the same reason as Kelly. It's circumstance. I think Tampa Bay has a great rookie quarterback. He'll be in his second year next year, in Jameis Winston. And he's the guy that sort of developed him into that 4,000-yard passer as a rookie. So I think you're talking about potentially the next true star quarterback in the NFL. And the fact that Cutter is married to him early on, I think that bodes well for success down the road, and I think it's really going to work out for Tampa Bay.
John and I will be live at the Golden Nugget on Friday this week. We will not be there tomorrow. We will be there on Friday. So for those of you who like to stop out and say hello to John, which we always enjoy seeing people, we will be there Friday, 2 to 6, the Sports Bash. Tomorrow, Doug Pederson will have his press conference. John and I will talk about the highlights of that at 4:05. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, Mike.
All right, John McMullen starts things off. When we come back, Casey Joyner takes a look at the NFL playoffs. The Final Four are set. Who are they? How did they get there? We'll discuss coming up.